Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of No Choice, Love Yourself. I'm your host, Praggya, and today I'm here with Nafeesa. Nafeesa, am I pronouncing your name right?
Yeah, perfect.
I always like to ask because I can butcher names and all, but today we're here with Nafeesa, and Nafeesa is a 1-4 pure generator with the channel of preservation and struggle and awareness up top. So maybe we'll talk a little bit more about your design eventually, but I think
Sure.
to begin, I always kind of like to begin with when did design come into your life? How did you meet it? What your journey has been with it so far? Yeah, we just
hmm
that.
Yeah, sure. That's a great place to start. 2018. So I'd been into astrology my whole life. My mom is Indian, and I don't know if you know, but astrology is a really big thing over there. I'm just kidding. But my uncle's a Vedic astrologer, all this stuff. So it's always been a part of my life, as far as I can remember. And I moved out to from New York City. I moved out to Los Angeles, and a friend of mine who's a very, very close friend of mine, we kind of went down the Western astrology rabbit hole together, and we're just really into it. She is a 2-5 mental projector, and one day sent me this thing called Human Design, like some information on it, and she was like, "You would love this." And I was like, "This looks weird, and I don't know what it's saying." And I was like, "Meh." And then she kept sending it to me, and she was like, "You will really like it. Just look at it." And so I finally did. She guided me into it. And as soon as I like figured out what it was, I like fell in deep. Um, and it made so much sense for everything that I had been going through. I realized I was living my life all wrong. And yeah, just there was immediate recognition in there. And then just kept diving deeper, 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 realized all this stuff that about how I was living my life was completely wrong for me. Um, that kind of started to fall apart. And yeah, it just kept going. And then let's see. So I was diving deep into it. My boyfriend, who's also a mental projector, bought me the definitive book of human design because he saw me getting really into it. So sent me like gave me that. Then I could dive even deeper, etc. A bunch of stuff happened. And then yeah, and then in 2020, uh 1-3 manifesting generator who's owned the aerial studio that I teach in, she like, "Oh, I'm starting a business course. You should really start a business in human," and she said astrology because I hadn't talked to her much about human design. She's like, "You should start a business in astrology. I'll teach you how." And I was like, "Okay, yeah." It was immediate yes in that moment. And so she taught me how to set up that stuff. And yeah, I started doing readings in 2021.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, a lot of mental projectors guiding me into things. Bananas.
Yeah. It's strange, for the people that do have mental projectors in their life, they're like bombarded with mental projectors, and then other people have like no access to any projectors, it seems. It's like, what's
Yeah,
yeah.
I
Uh,
know.
but
Do
that's
you have mental projectors in your life? Other mental projectors?
yeah. And they play like a huge,
Yeah.
huge role in my life because, as a projector, I learn so much by just watching other people. And when I get to see a mental projector be in their process and really witness that, it teaches me so much about, potentially what my process could look like and to experiment with that as well. Because, you know, at
Yeah.
first, there's a lot in common with, like, say, your type or like your subtype, but eventually I feel like once you get a little bit deeper, you kind of realize that your process is actually quite unique. Like, even two mental projectors, you put them together and they can be so absolutely different from each other and agree and
Mm-hmm.
disagree on just, completely different things as well. So That's interesting to find. I'm wondering, what was it about you as a generator? Like when you found out that you're a generator, like did that immediately resonate? What about, the general information that you come across initially, like deeply resonated for you?
Yeah, well, at the very first, because some of the first charts that I was looking at was my friend and my boyfriend, I was like, oh, I'm jealous. I'm not a mental projector, because they were both mental projectors. So there was definitely that. But then when it was, so I had felt like my whole life I was doing things that I didn't want to do. And I was trying to force myself to do the things that I was told that I should do and work hard at those things. And I had been on those tracks working hard at the things that weren't right for me. But I didn't know that I wasn't supposed to be doing the things that I didn't have energy for, and I wasn't supposed to be forcing myself in those directions. And so that those aspects of being a generator were immediate. And then also unconscious fourth line network and friendships and all the things have been the thing have really made my body feel safe. So that completely resonated as well, immediately from the get-go. And yeah, being a generator as just fighting against the things that came naturally to me was the biggest thing at the beginning for me completely. Does
Yeah,
that make sense?
yeah.
I don't think my throat's on yet.
That's fine.
Yeah,
Um, you know, it's an interesting point you bring up. You do have an undefined throat, right?
I do.
And it can be such, like, I don't know, I've met people on both extremes where you have an undefined throat and you find out you have an undefined throat and you're like, that's bullshit, because I love to talk. Like, I can talk left, right, and center, right? And then you meet people with an undefined throat that are like, this is such a relief. I
Yeah.
can just now really like settle into and just be quiet and just witness what's happening and take in what's happening, and at the right time the words just flow through if they have to. They don't
Hmm.
necessarily
Yeah.
have to. And so what has your journey been like? What was your reaction to that? And then how do you, because it can be quite tricky, right, with an undefined throat, and this world is just so hell-bent on manifesting things and communicating, and that being such a central part of our lives.
Hmm.
It can almost feel like, like I wish I had that, or I wish I could attract more attention consistently, right? And those are the things
Yeah.
that are present in the throat. So what does it look like for you, and how has it changed, like your relationship with your throat as you've deconditioned more and more?
That's such a good question. Um, well, my the earliest conditioning that I can remember is kindergarten at school, the teachers telling my parents, "Oh, Nafeesa's great, but she only speaks when she has something to say. She only speaks when she has an answer to the question." And my parents like, "Oh, well, when else is she supposed to speak?" It's, "Oh, she's supposed to try to speak, even when she doesn't have an answer, to work through those things, whatever." So I remember from then it was like, "Oh, if you don't have anything to say something anyways. Try and do that to bring attention to yourself." So um, there was that, and then there was finding out that I had an undefined throat, and I was like, "Yes, that was also so freeing." Because I remember experimenting with that when I first found out about it, and when I was in group situations, allowing myself to not say anything until I had something to say. And then when I did say something, I had feel that pressure come up. But if I didn't actually have something to say and I wasn't speaking in response, realizing power my voice actually did have when I did finally have something to say, and when I waited that out and I actually waited to respond. So and there were so many fewer cringe moments, is a way that I think of it. There were, the things that I said were afterwards like, "Oh, why did I say that? I didn't mean to say it like that. I wish I'd said it like this." All that started to dissipate. But there is still that theme. I mean, we never completely get over the the not self of the undefined center. So there is still that theme of sometimes the attention of oh, sometimes I'm recognized for this and that feels really good, and then sometimes I'm not. And so the inconsistency of that still is a theme that crops up in my mind, especially when I'm tired, or when I'm not exercising enough for my channel struggle, things like that, that I notice. Yeah.
And there are a
I
lot.
want to talk at some point. I would love to, sorry. At some point I would love to hear if you're okay, share just your journey with weightlifting
Yeah, I'd love to.
at some point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Should we do that now? I had a few thoughts come up as you were talking, so maybe I'll
Yeah.
share those and then we can talk about my weightlifting. But I think it's interesting
Yeah.
to have the design that you have where you have this head and ajna definition. So this is a really loud mind that is constantly churning thoughts, right? That is constantly like loud, right? That's what the channel of awareness,
Yeah.
it's so loud. Even like I have 61, and whenever I have it defined through the transit, it's so loud up in here. It's a
No.
lot going on, and sometimes it's not even coherent words. It's just sounds, busyness, like that's how it feels for me. There's just a lot of pressure, and then you have
Yeah.
separated from the rest of your design, your
Yeah.
sacral, the spleen, and the root, and you have a really, really defined root. And so naturally, there's a lot of fuel to move, a lot of, I don't remember exactly what gates there were, but I just remember seeing it like completely lit up, right? And so there is
Yeah.
tendency to physically move. And I mean, which is pretty obvious from all of the things that you post on your Instagram, the aerial and some of the other stuff you post about as well. But what is interesting is that all of this energy, like from the bottom and the top, is trying to reach the throat, you know. And so, and on top of that, the world is so focused on the throat, it's so communication centered, right? And what you said about, like not being able to like find a voice, and also not have a consistent voice, not have a consistent way of communicating, and yet having this like pressure sandwich kind of constantly be present in your life, it can make you feel like there's something really wrong with me, that I can't
Hmm.
in some way translate this or manifest this, or like really bring it out in a world in a way that it actually, like, that I actually am able to get the attention that I think that I deserve, and it
Yeah. Yeah.
such a, I mean, it's so funny because like the throat is like one on Ra's list of the hierarchy of centers. It's quite low, but from what I
Yeah.
see in the world, actually I see it show up in such a big way, just because manifesting and communicating is such a big deal for the world that we live in. So
Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely, so I'm kind of remembering my process from a few years ago now, because I feel like I'm in a lot of ways, like obviously I have so much work to do. Um, but I do remember, like, at that time, just really noticing that and feeling that. And when I was first learning about this stuff, when I was first diving into it and actually leaning into this stuff, um, being okay with that, because I'm just realizing my thoughts sometimes are just for myself, and that pressure is just for myself. And especially with learning about innocence motivation, because in my younger years there was a lot of people need to know this. I need to communicate this, and then paired with innocence motivation, as opposed to going into desire transference and pushing that on people. And it was just, the energy wasn't there. It was frustrated all the time. And so there was so much more, I guess I can say, like, maybe peace in just having these thoughts, and all the political stuff that's been happening over the past 3 or 4 years, whatever, all over the world. Just being okay with these integrations and thoughts and insights that I'm having. They're not always for everyone, and trusting the timing that if I am waiting to respond, they'll come out for the people who need to hear them or the people who are ready for them or whatever it is. And really sinking into that has brought me so much peace that it's not something that I am consciously struggling with as much as I used to, but I definitely used to. But now I just know that waiting to respond for those things has clear, like, given me so much peace, and my relationships are more harmonious, and all this stuff just feels so much better uh, when I do that. So it's not even a thing where I'm like, at this point, at least in this current moment, it's not a thing where I'm seeking that outlet. But there. Thank you for recognizing that. There is a lot of that pressure with nowhere for it to go, and so that's why I need to lift every single day or do intense exercise every single day, which I feel like is a huge thing with people with channels of struggle, the channel of struggle. And so that's why I'm really interested in your relationship with that. Yeah.
Yeah. It's all of the three channels that go from the root to the spleen are kind of, they're known as the athletic channels. And I do have 54 three times in my chart. I also have 48. So I have a very, very heavy root as well. Even though it doesn't look like a lot of activations, it's like 53 is three times and like 54 is it's just, it's heavy. And so, ever since I was little, like I've been quite athletic. The caveat to that is not always. I have my seasons, as I like to call it. Like I have months where I just really feel like if I don't move, that I just cannot handle the kind of intensity that I feel in my body. And so, like growing up, I played sports on and off. I was never one of those people that were on the team to like play it for a long time, but I would play every sport, like everything. And I really enjoyed it too. There's something to like do with like, I also feel kind of natural at playing all of these different sports as well. And there's just such a play that I get into and such a flow that it feels really good. But I always have this mental idea of, wow, I'm just like, oh, if only I was consistent, if only like I could just stick to it, I would be so good at this. I could even potentially pursue it, because I'm literally one of those people that can walk into the gym and in a month I'm like lifting so well. And there's something to be said about
for that too.
Like the projector way of lifting, because I was talking about this a little bit, because like earlier, whenever I used to play sports or whenever I used to lift weights or dance, any kind of physical activity that I used to do, I used to kind of try to become what I saw around me, in a sense, right? And I was amplifying so much energy too that I could be the dancer with the most energy, or I could be the tennis player who outlasted everyone else, or the badminton player who did that. But now, as I grew more in my awareness about my design, I think you're kind of hung. Can you hear me? Okay, we're back. We lost Nafeesa for a bit, and now we're back. I think I was saying something along the lines of talking about my
lifting, exercise, sports.
Yeah. So I had a strange relationship with it growing up, where I really judged myself for not being consistent and for not being able to show up. And also I had these moments of feeling just extremely exhausted as well. Like, really good, really well, pushing myself, feeling really good about it. And then just like crashing and
shut down.
Yeah. And then kind of wondering like, what, like, where did this come from? I was okay and everything was going good. And so, my relationship with all of these different physical activities that I engage with was always very on and off, on and off.
Mm-hmm.
When it was on, like I really, really enjoyed it. And when it was off, I wondered what the hell went wrong. Like why am I suddenly like someone that can't get off the couch? Like, why am I someone that literally cannot move? Like the difference is so drastic. Like someone who like when I do have my route defined, or it is a time when either depending on who I'm with or whatever's happening in the transit, I do feel this a lot of energy. And I'm one of those mental projectors that have like hanging gates, like potentials, dormant gates in every center. So I don't have any center. So it's never like I have an isolated experience of just my mental definition ever. Like I don't remember the last time that I just had that. It's never like that. I always have something else going on, some kind of conditioning I'm receiving. So and it was such a drastic like change in when it was on, the energy was there, I was just doing so much, and when it was off, it was like I couldn't even recognize myself, right? I couldn't recognize that I was in those moments. And so recently, when I realized I'm a mental projector, I don't have any motors, I kind of got to know about design. I really approached, and lifting was one of those things that at this stage in my life just feels so good in my system, and I really, really enjoy it. It feels really natural. And so, I kind of spoke to my coach about it, about my design a little bit, and how I would like to work on things, and how I don't want to push myself in class. I do CrossFit, which is like, if it's a group class, things can get like really crazy, and you can just
competitive.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm like 51 son, right? So I can get super competitive, right? But and it took me a while to really like feel into like my body as I was working out, like, okay, what is my limit? Like, and I kind of worked with my coach, and we kind of devised this plan where it's like, okay, like if you're feeling like you can do X amount of whatever, then why don't we just like never go beyond 50 or 60% of that? How about we just work with that? And I stopped getting injured. And again, I'm still not consistent. I'm still not one of those people that can make it at the gym like all year round. I have my seasons, I have my months, but that's fine. But what I really do find different now is, one, like the way that I live, it's not about exhaustion for me anymore. It's not about doing the most. It's not about being done at the end of the workout, which I notice like that's what a lot of generators would want, right? Like I have energy to offer to this, and after this, like I will feel satisfied when the energy is exhausted for this task, right? It's really about like perfecting the lifts. It's really about putting in the least amount of effort, but doing the different kinds of lifts in such an efficient way that I can
just
lift
making it
more and more.
which is the correct way to lift. That's amazing. It's like getting the bar up in the with the straightest path and with using the least amount of energy almost. That's so cool. I think that's so interesting, especially since you do have that sun in 51, because that for me it's so much it's a different approach. You're right. I do kind of want to be destroyed at the end of it, and have that satisfaction. That is a driving force for me. At the same time, it gives me energy. And then also for me, it's such a mental health thing. And I know that I'm not competitive. I'm so not. I have a completely open heart, open ego center. So it comes from a completely different place. I have zero competitive in me, but I do need someone to tell me what to do. Like by myself, I will not do anything. I will not, even though I know it's so important for my mental health and just daily functioning to do this, I have to put myself in situations where I am being motivated externally, to do it at all. Because if someone's not watching me, I will do zero push-ups or whatever it is, as opposed to but if someone's watching me then and they're monitoring, I will do what is required. But yeah, it's so interesting how this stuff, and I think the body lifting stuff is such a good example of it's one of, I find it one of the most fascinating examples of how people, because it's literal energy work, like very, very grounded energy work, and people come at it from such different places. It does so much it does different things for different people, and I think it's a cool example of differentiation and just a vignette into how different we are energetically. So thanks for sharing that.
I mean, it is something that I notice so much. Like, even when I'm in class, I'm watching all of these different people, and the way that they approach it and what they want out of it is just wildly different. And what I also notice is that the most amount of injuries tend to happen when, the coach is, say, for example, like, you got to do this, like, make it happen, like, you can do it, whereas, and I've worked with coaches like that, and I've injured myself in the process. Whereas like, now, I mean, it's so important to have the right person, like mentor, the right coach. And it's so important to have that communication with them, because I think everything changed. Like, my entire programming changed when I told him, like, yo, this is how I want to do things. This is what is important for me. Like, can you shift things? And my coach has a defined ego, big, fat, defined ego. And whenever I'm around him, like, I told him, like, yo, like, I don't want to do any ego lifting. And now he's the one who checks me. He's like, no, we're not going to go beyond that. Like, what is your 50%? Like, what is your 60%? We stick to that. And we don't need to push beyond that, because that's not the point. The point is that you want to be more efficient. And so we're going to work on that. And to work on that, it's the littlest of things. It's not even about lifting heavy. Like today, I think after months, I kind of started, like, came close to hitting some of, like, my older PRs, like close. And I didn't get here because I lifted heavy for the past few weeks. I got here because I worked on, like, really minute things that didn't even involve a lot of weightlifting. That was the thing that, like, made me so happy, because it's like, wow, this is what it is about for me. It isn't about being exhausted. Even all the conditioning work that happens, in CrossFit, like, it can be so hardcore. I just chill. Like, half the time I'm watching other people do their shit, because I'm like, I'm not push. Like, I'm not trying to, like, exhaust myself in any way. I'm here because I love the skill work. Like, I just love the skill that it takes for you to be that efficient and for you to be able to time things that well. Like, there's something about that's just really exciting for me. So asking, you can clearly
And then also I feel like there's this we're talking about mentors and everything, our fourth lines, because that's so good for us to have that. And then the community aspect, like two people who I go to the gym that I go to, I've been privy to their designs, both 4 lines. One's a 1-4, one's a 2-4. I'm obviously a 1-4. And it's so much about the community aspect and the coaches, and so
there's just something really
what about that for you too?
Yeah, for sure. There's something really relaxing about going to the same place, meeting the same people at the same time. Like, and in a gym, it's a really natural environment. You just get to, like, be yourself, and people and develop a relationship over time, like, nurture a connection with people over time. And there's just something so relaxing, like, about that, and, like, really looking out for each other, and, like, cheering each other on. Like, that's my favorite thing. Like, when you are struggling, even cleaning up your weights and picking them up, there are always people, like, helping you, and always people, like, I think I lost you again. Oh no.
Okay.
We're back.
So sorry about that.
It happens. We all do this. We're all well aware. sometimes I'm like
Yeah.
mid-meeting and I'm like so frustrated and irritated that it just wouldn't work. But the internet is the
Yeah.
internet. But I think we were talking about, the importance of a fourth line being having that community, having the
Yes.
opportunity to bond with other people and develop and nurture connections with other people. This is
Mm-hmm.
also one of the reasons I love taking courses and like classes where I like get to
Mm-hmm.
meet other people and also hear from other people, because it's just really beneficial for me to hear from different people. There's just something about that that just lands really well for me. And
Yeah.
I just enjoy the opportunity to like make new friends and get to know more people.
Yeah, there are a few things I love talking to defined throats in general, but just I sometimes it feels like talking to defined throats, you're expressing the thoughts better than I could ever express them. So there's when you were using the word relaxing, like for our fourth line bodies to be in those kinds of communities and have build those networks, like that really hit me frequency wise. Uh, just yeah, it is relaxing. It is relaxing to be in those environments, and also as passive mountains people, that there's also that element to it. And then you were also using another word that just left my mind, that also really resonated, but I forgot what that was. So,
Yeah.
but
I
that fourth
mean,
line element of being in community, that being relaxing, physically relaxing for our bodies, yeah, that hit.
and there's just something also about like sharing mundane things with people. I don't know what it is. Maybe it is a fourth line thing, but
Yeah.
like every day meeting someone and just kind of noticing little quirks and
Mm-hmm.
building like a friendship is something that really develops over time. It's a process
Yeah.
of getting to know each other's quirks, like little things, what makes this person tick. And there's just something so special
Yeah.
about being in that process for me,
Yeah.
regardless of where it ends up. But it just feels really good for my system
Yeah.
engaged in something like that, especially like also is like a 2-4, like it there are very few people that get through my barrier like that, or very few environments where like I'm very selective about what networks
Mm-hmm.
I kind of expose myself to and open myself up,
Yeah.
because yeah, there's that inherent selectivity in me. Not everybody gets through the barrier, but once you do, then it's just you're in my play zone, and I'm just my natural vulnerable self, and I
Yeah.
really enjoy like meeting people in like the mundane world and getting to know like what chocolates they like, and like what TV shows
Yeah.
they're watching, and what random thing happened in their life. There's just something so wonderful about that for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I remember the word you used, the word opportunity. So that frequent that keynote opportunity, in that what felt like a higher frequency than a lot of people think, that, oh, I don't want to be known as an opportunist, but it's opening an opportunity for connection and giving us, yeah, these types of opportunities. And it's interesting hearing you say that as a 2-4, it makes you feel like you can be your natural self. So um, allowing you to be that too. Whereas for me, it's so much more like I feel safe. Like as a one line, I need that solid foundation. I feel safe in the networks that feel good to me. It's like it's necessary for my survival. So yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's really cool. Like, being a fourth line, and there's something that you brought up is like that word, some of these words that we use in the English language, like they have such a negative connotation to them. Say, for example, an opportunist, right? When I
I
heard
know.
I was like, I'm not sure
Yeah.
I see myself like that, because
Yeah.
Um, but now that I think about it, yeah, I think fourth lines are opportunists, and there's nothing wrong about that, because it's not like
Yeah.
we're trying to take advantage of of someone, where actually we as fourth lines, you would watch other fourth lines, we nurture relationships in such a deep way, and before
Mm-hmm.
if anything can come out of those relationships, you've given a lot to that relationship,
Yeah,
right? And so,
definitely.
it's not like, in a sense, it's not like you're taking advantage of someone else or a situation. It's more like you made space for that. You
Yeah,
put that into life. You develop that kind of trust with someone, and because
yeah,
you have that kind of trust with someone, that they think that you're the right person for this or that, depending on
exactly.
whatever.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Because I've never met a person, or actually, you can tell me what your observation has been of this, but I've never met a fourth line or really anyone, but some fifth lines. The idea of networking and going to networking events, seen who, um, the only people that I've observed that I've been privy to their designs who will go into a networking event and feel comfortable and like that's something that they want to pursue are those fifth lines who are um, but for us as fourth lines, I feel like that energy of going to a networking event or going with the energy of needing to network is uncomfortable, because for us there isn't that solid foundation. But fifth lines, it seems like the ones that I've observed are more comfortable with that because they're like, oh yeah, I'm here to bolster my reputation or I'm here for this purpose. Um, yeah, that's something I've noticed. What
Yeah.
about you?
Yeah, no, same. I agree. Like, I ask a fourth line if they want to go for like a networking. It's the ickiest like feeling, because there's
Oh,
something about that that's not, at least for me, it's not natural. Like, I would
mm-hmm,
not want to do that at all. And I do have a lot of fifth lines in my life, and they're way more open to being out there in these events because, one, they get projected on. So
mm-hmm. Yeah,
that
exactly.
sense of like, ooh, I'm attractive, I'm seductive, like there's something
Yeah.
about me that people really notice. And, and obviously they get the chance to be a savior in some sense, bring something practical
Mm-hmm.
to the table if they do have something to offer in that way. But fifth lines to me as well, from my experience and from what I've seen, are way more out there than fourth lines. Fourth lines are,
Yeah.
from my experience, fourth lines are the ones that are just quietly, just nurturing connection, doing their thing. Like, for example, I don't know if you know Mar, Genius to Freak on Instagram.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
they're another mental projector, and they're actually one of my closest friends. And we
Mm.
ended up meeting in a human design collective class. And it's been, I don't know, over a year or something like that. We naturally like build our friendship, and now very naturally, and they're also a 2-4. So
Mm-hmm.
it's naturally evolving into us potentially doing some kind of work with each other. And it's like, whoa, like neither of us saw this coming. Neither of us planned for this. Like, none of us like
Yeah.
mentally strategize, like, I'm going to build friendship and trust here. And, then it's going to turn into this. And then it's going to, no, we were just
Yeah.
vibing, we were just straight up
Yeah.
like getting to know each other, really enjoying each other's minds and each other's company, and one thing led to another, and here we are. So
Yeah.
we fourth lines get such a bad rep.
Yeah, I know. Definitely. Yeah. And one of my favorite things about design and living this stuff is that if we try to bring in that energy of, oh, I'm going to go to this networking event, I'm going to force this and I'm going to get something out of this relationship and I'm going to force this friendship so that I can get something out of it, it doesn't work. So even if we try, that's the beauty of the system. It's because obviously we go through periods of questioning, um, especially with mental deficit or just being people, dealing with something that's quite esoteric for and not normal for sure. We go through periods of questioning it, but the thing I keep coming back to is that okay, I can try to do these things differently and I can try to live against what this is saying, But it doesn't work. I inevitably get frustrated, inevitably. And it doesn't feel natural. And so, yeah, it's just one of my favorite things because even if we tried to do that, it wouldn't work. It just wouldn't happen. And so that's the all the evidence that I just keep seeing that evidence come up in my own life, like, and the lives of people around me, where it's okay, I can try to do it differently and do the way that I'm supposed to. I can try to initiate, I can um, try to get attention or whatever it is. I can try to force myself to be motivated, um, and it just doesn't work. I can't. I can try to stick to consistent identity and be the same person, but it doesn't work. I can't. I love it.
Yeah, it just has a way of like, I don't know if proof is the right word, but it just has a way of
Hmm.
validating itself to you over time. Like, even if you do, go through phases of, is this all bullshit? And I'm definitely right now in
Yeah.
those phases. And
I saw that. I would love to hear a bit about that, where you are with that, like in this present moment,
yeah,
like right now.
yeah,
Yeah.
I do have to say that I don't think that I have certainty right now. So
Hmm.
whatever I do say, I mean, it's still in process, and
Hmm.
I'm still processing it. I'm still trying to find like what is really true for me in all of this. And one of the
Hmm.
things that really got me into this questioning phase of mine, and I think it's a very natural process of deconditioning, by the way, from the perspective that I have now, where and I see it as really important and really like essential for you to have these times when you actually look at human design from a skeptical point of view.
Yeah.
Because initially when you do come across human design, and a lot of us are seekers in our own ways, like we may not be looking for the answer, but anybody that comes to design like is looking for some kind of answers, like trying to figure out like what's going on in my life, right?
Yeah.
So that that naturally tends to put you in kind of a vulnerable place, right? Because you're just open to getting answers from the outside world. And so
Yeah.
when you do come into design, from what I've seen and from my own experience, it really has a lot of details, a lot of logic. It's visual, it's auditory, like it really captures you, and it just
Yeah.
has so many things to offer that initially you can be completely enamored and like just you can just think of this as the answer. You can just think
Yeah.
knowledge is something that is all that you need, that now you understand everything, now you understand yourself, you have a way of understanding others, you have a way of understanding the world around you, how we all work together. Now like now life is going to be good. And lo and behold, you're still you, and your mind is still your
Hmm.
mind, and you're still
Yeah.
human process. And so,
Hmm.
eventually you kind of exit this honeymoon phase with human design. As
Definitely.
my friends like to say, it's like, oh, it seems like our honeymoon phase is over, because initially it's all like design says this, and actually, it's I don't exactly know how to explain it yet, but there is something to design. There is truth to it, right? There is, because you just see it in such a clear way, and then you get into your experiment and you start experimenting, and it just keeps
Yeah.
teaching itself to you, right? But also potentially there could be some mental bias there, you know.
Yeah.
You're seeing
100%.
what you
Yeah.
want to see, right?
Hmm.
And there's nothing wrong with that either, we're all human beings, and we're all trying to make sense of the life that we have. We're all trying to make sense of our existence, and we're all trying to like find a story that really works for us,
Yeah.
it's that works for us, a way of making sense of the world that works for us. It doesn't have to
Yeah.
be right or wrong. We'll never know, if it's
Yeah.
the truth or not. So we're all looking for that. But in that process, when you're really vulnerable, when you're feeling really lost, and you're feeling like yeah, I don't know where I belong and who I am, and something like this comes into your life, you can just really give all of your authority to the system. Whereas
Mm-hmm.
what the system is really trying to teach is that you're your own authority, right? It's
Exactly. Yeah.
And what I also am coming to for myself is, one, just really taking a step back and asking myself, like, what is true for me? Like, what can I say for sure that I have seen over and over again? What can
Mm-hmm.
I say that I know this with, like, I understand this with certainty, right? What is
Mm-hmm.
something that I have verified over and over again? Some of the things that are
Mm-hmm.
very obvious to me, I mean, my projector aura, it is focused and absorbing. I have no
Mm-hmm.
uncertainty about that, right? I am very clear that when I try to insert myself into situations where people have not asked for my opinion, it's just awful for me, right? I'm certain of that. What I'm also certain of is center mechanics. Like, I know that I'm not really that emotional by myself, but if I enter my emotional dad's room, like within 5 minutes, I start feeling things, like I cannot deny that. That happens over and over, and I can feel that ego, I can just this so some of the things that I've been able to verify for myself are center mechanics, aura. This is
Mm-hmm.
what I do know for sure. I do understand for sure. I also have witnessed a lot of, like, impact of, say, for example, I have a landscape body. We're both mountains passive. I don't do
Mm-hmm.
well in cities. Like, hardscapes are actually really, really difficult for me. And
Yeah.
I feel extremely tense in those environments. I cannot deny that. I cannot deny that when I eat at night, I can digest it better. Like, I'm definitely nocturnal, So there are so many things that I've been able to verify for myself. And yet there's
Mm-hmm.
immense knowledge in this system that is not verifiable, that I'm now starting to get very cautious about presenting as fact. Like, there's
Ah.
this there's this sense that you have that if all of this is true, and if I've been able to verify this for myself, then everything, like all of it, must be true. That I
Mm-hmm.
can trust all of it, which I'm
Yeah.
now starting to be like, I don't know about that, and I also don't know
Yeah.
enforcing the system from, like, top to down in that approach. It's like, it's an experiment, and the most valuable reframe that I've had for myself is, everything that design offers you are just signposts. It's not a bunch of rules. Yes, mechanics make logical sense. Yes, there are certain things that could potentially be absolute sure, but what's really important is that you don't try to enforce it like that, because then it starts to become a prison cell. Then it starts to become
Mm.
a cage. I'm a mental projector with no motors. I can't work out. I don't have energy.
No. Yeah. That's
But
not
it
true.
starts to get that way, right? I'm a projector,
Yeah.
so I don't have energy, or I'm a generator, so I'm supposed to be very high energy all the time. It doesn't work like that, right?
Yeah.
They're not
Mm-hmm.
a bunch of rules. Human design, at most, is a bunch of signposts that you get to test out for yourself, and you get to give them the meaning that you want to give them. Like, what bitterness feels like me and what frequency that has is very, very different from so many of the other projectors that I've spoken to, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I
Definitely.
mean, each one of us is here to play with it and give it our own meaning, and, like, really see for ourselves what we want to hold for ourselves as signposts. And of course,
Mm-hmm.
it can evolve too, right? And what we want to sort of just let go a little bit. And also, it's just really important for me that at some point of time, you just stop studying this shit and you just go out there and you just live your life. you know
Yeah.
you
Mm-hmm.
just you just see what happens. If you've absorbed so much of this information, like right now I'm at that point where I'm like, I don't give a shit. Like I'm gonna go out there, live my life, and
Yeah.
I can't help but see it, you know. And
Yeah.
beauty of it. That is the beauty of it. Like that I love.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely. So is the process that I was just witnessing right now, is that so yes, I have so many mental projectors in my life. I do not understand your authority. So I would love to hear a little bit about your experience of your authority. Like even going like this questioning, and we all go through that. I've been through that, of course, but is this part of you going through like filtering out the system through your authority? And I would love to hear your experience with that and what it feels like in your body and all of that, if you
Yeah.
want to share.
So it's really interesting, you know, with the mental projector authority, because a lot
Yeah.
of different
So
mental
I can't. It's something that I can never really. I can say what I've heard. I can say what I've heard. Of course, we can say that about all authorities, but mental projector authority in particular. I just say what I've heard, and then like, is that what it's like for you? You know what I mean? So it's the hardest one to like put into words in a little bow with a little bow at the top. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, I mean, the best
Yeah.
way that I would describe it is process-based authority or
Mm-hmm.
indirect authority or even outer authority. And I keep going back and forth in terms of what I want to actually name it and how
Mm-hmm.
I want to conceptualize it, because it is one of those things that's difficult to understand unless you're a mental projector, right? And even
Yeah.
projector, it is initially difficult to understand, right? Because there's so many like different kinds. I mean, there are three different kinds of mental projectors. You know, you have the ones with all the head and the ajna and the throat defined, and then the ones with the
Mm-hmm.
ajna defined, and then the ajna and the throat, right? And
Yeah.
I feel like the process of all of them could also be slightly different. Um,
Very much
I would
so.
speak for myself as a mental projector with ajna and throat definition. I do have consistent access to my throat, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
something about being able to hear my voice talk about a certain topic, an invitation, explore that fully,
Mm-hmm.
really brings me in touch with myself. And again, when I am soundboarding, when I'm talking about a decision that I'm trying to make, you know,
Mm-hmm.
it can be a very quick process, or it can be a very long process that I have to go through with different people. And the way that I
Yeah.
recognize that I have my clarity, I mean, there are a bunch of signposts, but the the most embodied, like the body sensations that I can describe is, it just feels like what I'm saying lands.
Yeah.
Just feels like, you know, there's a certain frequency that I've started to recognize that is just mine, you know, like that's just like talking like on the surface. And then
Mm-hmm.
eventually at a certain point, as I'm processing things, it just goes deeper, and it sits in my body and it fits in my body. It almost feels like my words have space in my body. It doesn't feel like my words are trying to like break open my body, or it doesn't feel like, you know, they don't have space here, you know, in my system. And that can be also really confusing for people, right? But it is something for you to just kind of go through. I mean, at this stage in my life, even my friends recognize my mental voice, and my friends recognize that deep place of, okay, this is it, this is landing, right? It feels like it's
Mm-hmm.
landing, because even the pitch changes, the tone changes. I mean, there's so many things you can begin to notice, and this is I'm just talking about body cues. If I
Yeah.
were to look at some human design signposts, I mean, when it's really right for me, it's very obvious that I'm very active, I'm very involved, I'm taking responsibility, right? Because I have
Mm.
motivation. And whenever I'm just kind of taking a step back, more passive, more, we'll just see how it unfolds, or kind of sounding hopeful, you know, listening out for that. That's then
Yeah.
me to listen to like, oh, transferred here. Maybe this invitation isn't really for me to be responsible for, right? Because that's how I feel. Like when I'm really making a correct decision for myself, it just feels like I have a lot of agency. It feels like I really want to take responsibility for this. I really want to do something about this. I really want to shift this. I really want to add something here or change something here. It's really active for me. Another signpost for me would also be, in terms of view, right? So I do have wanting view, and I know you do as well. And it's so obvious to me when I'm looking at survival. Like it's just, I cannot miss that anymore. Even more than got into hope, I'm almost always distracted by survival. Almost always. It's incorrect. It's about, it's not about like I like to call this like wanting view, like elevated shit. Like when I'm really looking at what I'm here to look at, it feels like it's not the most important thing, but it's what I want. Like if everything, if the bases were sorted, like if the foundation was there, what could the world be like? What do I, it's elevated in a sense. And so when I'm talking about something and it feels like I just have to worry about like all of the basics being in place, I know that, okay, this actually doesn't sound like me, or it doesn't sound like a good opportunity for me. It doesn't sound like the right call for me. Sometimes cognition shows up really clearly as well. Like I have inner vision, and I mean, I can close my eyes and the images burst. And again, there's that sense of my body feels open when I'm having these visions, versus like there's that feeling of being closed and my body not being receptive to those images or those visions, right? So I mean, there are so many signposts. You can even think about, like, as I'm processing the invitation, I talk about like, what is this invitation asking of me? Because I do have some logical understanding to offer. I'm quite opinionated. Do I feel like that's what's being recognized and invited? So there are a lot of human design signposts that are helpful. And then there's also how it feels for me in my body, what my voice sounds like. At a certain point, like even more than the human design signpost, at a certain point, I recognize there's this frequency to my voice where it's like, okay, now I don't need to talk about it anymore. Like it's done. I don't need to talk to you or anyone else. Like I know this is it. It's clear. It's happening. And I'm going for it. Or, I'm out. Like, the mental projector authority, from how I see it, is a process of gathering evidence, either for being involved in this or not being involved in this, right? So it's just, sometimes it even takes me like kind of half saying yes and experiencing the environment or experiencing the person or whatever it is a little bit, to then decide, okay, actually, no, this is not right, or I want to keep going further, right? So there's the process of just dipping your toe a little bit and like going a little bit closer to it. And at some point of time, you either want to keep going deeper or you're out. And again, throughout this process, you're talking to whoever you feel comfortable speaking to. So that's kind of how I would. Is that helpful?
Yeah, that is. It's also interesting because as a sacral person, or maybe someone who's splenic, or even a self-projected projector, or any of the other authorities, they're, especially at the beginning of human design, so many people say, and Ra said, strategy and authority. But it seems like for the mental projector, it is so important actually for you to understand so many more of the signposts. Like you go into view, you went into motivation, going into that substructure. It's almost more important for the mental projector to dive even further into the system, to even just understand your own authority, because a lot of body cues, but to understand those body cues and what they're saying to you, you do have to go and study all of those deeper signposts. It's not just success and bitterness. to watch out for. It's not just recognized and not recognized. You have to go so much deeper to really understand that authority.
I would 100% agree. And not just these signposts, like as a mental projector, because the only thing you really have going on consistently is this head of yours, and sometimes even communicating that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this is someone that is deeply mental, that has this cognitive process, intellectual process, this conceptualization process going on the whole time. And then you have all of this openness, and it can, I mean, the not self mind can be immensely loud, immensely complex, and really
Mm-hmm.
nuanced, like really, really, really nuanced. And so I would even go as far as saying, like, it's so beneficial for mental projectors to be able to not just look at the not self themes of the centers, but go even deeper into rave psychology and look at mental conditioners and look at harmonic influencers and conditioning receptors, and really map out all
Mm-hmm.
the ways that their mind
Wow.
fuck with them, truly. And I mean, obviously, this is not something that I would recommend to a mental projector that is just entering their experiment, but it's mental projectors are deeply conditioned and they're deeply stuck in their mind, and it's just painful. It's painful. It's a painful existence, truly, unless and until you really like unpack it and unravel it and really see it, like really see it.
Yeah.
And then things sort of start to fall into place. But I would really say that as a mental projector, you have to study deeply, and like really truly, like I don't think that it would be enough for me to just do a basic living your design course or ABC or
Yeah.
it's just not enough. I need to know more, because I'm just always in my head. And if I can't
Yeah.
unpack that, and if I can't see it, I can't see what's happening, then it's really difficult. Like, it's just even even knowing more things helps me like be in the process of soundboarding more, because there's just more to like, process. And I don't know, like some mental projectors don't like being asked questions when they're soundboarding. I
Mm.
love being asked questions because I feel like it brings a new perspective. And then my ajna can really get involved into like conceptualizing about that. And through that, my voice might say something, and then I might end up somewhere
Yeah.
different that I wouldn't end up on my own, you know?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think it looks different for all mental projectors, but from where I'm seeing things, I really do think that mental projectors benefit immensely from going deep, and specifically really going deep into the not self mind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I wonder if the fact that you like questions has to do with having an undefined head
Yeah, for sure.
specifically. It just keeps going.
For sure.
Yeah. Do you
Yeah.
feel like you have a good sense of your authority at this point? Like, and how long did that take?
Honestly, I've always been kind of a talker, so it wasn't like it wasn't really difficult for me to get on board with the whole soundboarding thing, and that I hear myself through talking, and especially as a fourth line.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can imagine, I'm just like hitting my friends up and like having hours long
Yeah.
conversations just very naturally anyway, right? And so,
Yeah.
but I would say the kind of recognition I have for my own authority now, it did not exist before. It did, in fact, it is something that I feel like maybe in my third year of deconditioning, there is just, it's so clear now. Like I cannot ignore it. Like when my authority is saying something, it's just so visceral for me. It's beyond the mind, right? It's something
Yeah.
that my body recognizes. And now I know
Yeah.
what that frequency feels like. Sometimes I even like get this like some like goosebumps, or like I don't know, like truth bumps is what I call them. It just sits so well, you know.
Wow.
Even though you've argued for and against it for weeks and days, when the clarity hits, it doesn't matter what the argument was. That's another really beautiful thing. Like, once the clarity lands, it's not about what you said about it or not. It's about whether you're in or you're out. And that just becomes really clear.
Yeah. And it seems like it's not only understanding your mind really well, but you really have to understand your body, because you're getting goosebumps, you're getting all these different body signals that you really have to be very attuned to. Because I feel like for me, as a sacral and splenic person, if I just pay attention to my sacral, kind of everything else figures itself out. I don't have to, I mean, all of these signals are cues. I get other types of signals besides sacral signals all the time. But if I just am really paying attention to the sacral one, I can kind of ignore everything else. Like, not really ignore it, but that's the only one that really matters and really makes a difference. Whereas for you as a mental projector, it seems like you have to be so much more in tune with all of the signals, all of them, because all of that is giving you information.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I would add something here too. It's you have to be aware of your mind, you have to be aware of your body, and you have to be able to really recognize your environment, because that
Mm-hmm.
can have such a deep impact on your body, on your mind, that you can easily get lost in it. So if you don't actually recognize what's happening around, if I don't recognize the ego beings around me, if I don't
Mm-hmm.
recognize the sacred beings around me, if I don't recognize the mental inspiration I'm getting, then I'm in trouble,
Yeah.
really in trouble. So it's
Yeah.
it's really a deep process for mental projectors, but also one that is so, like, absolutely incredible to be in. Like, once you start to recognize things, you just realize just how much spaciousness you have to offer as a mental projector, and also how much awareness you have to offer. And there's just something really beautiful about that. I find, at least in my experience, because I've
Yeah.
been through years of, like, what the fuck is my design? Like, why do I get to be this, like, walking, talking head? Like, I wish I had this, and I wish this could be that. And, finally, slowly, as I'm deconditioning and experiencing more of myself, it's like, wow, there's actually some beauty to this, like, this is an incredible, incredible design to have. Of course, if you're in the right environment and you're educated, because my life before design, that was that was not fun.
Yeah. So I'm just gonna throw that initial question back at you. So when you first found it, what drew you in? Because for me, it was an immediate, like, I could start experimenting right away, sacral authority, wait for things to come to me, see how I feel about the day outside, it was an immediate thing. Um, but I feel like with some, well, the mental projectors that I'm thinking of, and other like, my boyfriend doesn't have a defined throat, so he just has the top two. Oh, I'm not supposed, like, what do you do with that? So I feel like, because it's so hard for you to know yourself also as a projector, and there's such little information out there, and it's really such an individual process for you to get in touch with that authority and really understand the invitation. um, yeah, I'm just interested what actually drew you in as well initially, before you had the opportunity to go deep.
Wondering what it was. I was just captured by it. I just don't know exactly what it was. I mean, one of the things I remember very clearly was when I kind of witnessed the openness that I have, and how that made me, like, super sensitive and
Mm,
susceptible to taking on, in a sense, the color of my environment. That was something
mm-hmm,
that I immediately was like, yes, because I was already, like, spending so much time working on setting boundaries. So I'd already clearly
mm,
identified in my life that I have an issue with merging with my environment and the people in it, and
yeah,
kind of losing myself in my environment. I already had
Mm-hmm.
recognized that. I was already in therapy for that. I was already like, looking at so many different like spiritual systems to kind of find like what's going on. And so I think the openness and the sensitivity and the empathy and all of that stuff was something that immediately was like, yes, this is it.
Yeah.
This explains why I've been so vulnerable. And, you know, being in some really, I would say, traumatic relationships previously, like that was another thing when I kind of realized like how important it is for projectors to be around the right people that truly recognize
Mm-hmm.
them and invite them. I mean, that was immediately also something that totally captured me. I was like, yeah, now I can look back and kind of make sense of why certain relationships were just awful for me, because I just felt
Mm.
resentful and bitter. That's another thing, bitterness. Oh boy, did I recognize bitterness. Like I was definitely so well versed. I just didn't put those like words together, like that frequency that I felt inside my body and bitterness together. But as it was presented, I was like, oh my gosh, I am so bitter. I have been so bitter for most of my life.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That makes sense.
What
Yeah.
what was it like finding out for you your not self theme of frustration? Did you recognize it?
100% immediately. Immediately. And not only just feeling frustrated, but also just looking at the blocks that I had been experiencing in my life. Okay, when I really try to do this and I'm trying to push in this direction, um, for example, like I saw, I'd always hated, I wasn't very interested in science as a subject, like when I was younger. And then I was forcing myself to try to get into medicine because it seemed like a sure thing. It seemed like a clear path. It seemed like there were steps to get there and I'd have some sort of success in some way. I was pushing in that direction, pushing, pushing, pushing. And there was just no roadblocks, roadblocks, roadblocks. So that kind of frustration was very, that kind of energetic frustration was immediately apparent. Anything that I can't, I'd always said about myself, I can't force myself to do things I don't want to do. I can't do it. Even if I try, it doesn't work. I can't do it. So that was an immediate recognition as well for me, the
Yeah,
frustration. Yeah.
yeah. And especially with that spleen, the sacral to spleen connection, like I mean, not only do you have this recognition of I want to care for this, I want to put my energy into this, but also
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to, because this
Yeah.
really very loud about this is not good for me. Like this is not
Yeah.
giving me a feeling of well-being, you know?
Yeah. And it also literally will, the health things that crop up if I'm trying to do these things that I don't want to do are apparent as well. If my body is unhealthy and I'm making unhealthy choices if I'm forcing myself in these frustrating directions. It was very obvious. So for me, the system has been such a uh, body centered thing for me because I do have all that body stuff on the bottom. Um, it's all of that was so immediately resonant and apparent. So I'm always interested, especially with mental projectors and people who have more of the upper stuff going on, just like what draws you in. Because for me, it was so, even being consecutive for me, like when I was little, I would not, actually not so little, quite a bit older. Like I would have like blocks of Parmesan cheese that I just like eaten, like just and that's it. That's all I wanted. It's like, oh, you're always just eating ingredients, like all those things that I couldn't have one apple. I would have the entire bushel of apples or whatever it ended up being. And all those things were immediate recognition. Just all the body things were so immediate for me, definitely. And how it felt when I didn't have anything to say and was forcing myself to say something to your point from earlier. And the motivation, oh my God, all of it. All of it. As soon as I figured out what it meant after the initial this looks weird, it was immediate. Very
Yeah.
sacral, splenic.
What does your sacral response feel like? Does it feel consistent? Like is there some consistency in it, or like what does it feel like for you in your body?
Oh, it depends. Yeah, it depends on what's being presented. Definitely. So sometimes it can be quieter, sometimes it can be like a like that, like literally like that, like yes, I want to do it, ooh, like that. Um, so yeah, it depends on what I'm being presented with, I think, and how much it would open up.
But like,
Yeah,
so does the energy kind of show up immediately sometimes, and then sometimes it's just something that builds a little bit over
yeah,
time? And what about the sounds? Do you find yourself making those generator sounds, or no?
yeah. More so as I've been deconditioning. Definitely the no can be like, ugh, that those kinds of sounds will come out. I can do like a lot of sighing, a lot of squealing, honestly, for me, if I'm really, not feeling self-conscious or anything. There's a lot of squealing, which can be embarrassing, or used to be embarrassing, but now it just is what it is. And I welcome it because I know that that's a sacral yes to something. Um, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna ask you one last question. Do you have energy for
Okay.
one last question?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. What are you skeptical about? What is the thing that doesn't sit well with you in design?
Oh, I'm skeptical about. Well, I go through phases of being skeptical of the whole system. Definitely, but I think I like what you were saying before. I think it's a healthy thing to do. It's always good to question, and I've always because there are so many different ways to look at the same thing. Like I was watching a cult documentary yesterday, and we're all coming to the same conclusions, no matter what lens we're looking at life through, whether it's a scientific lens, whether it's a human design lens, an astrology lens, and any other, a sociology lens. Any of these studies are studying the same thing. And I think just recognizing that and seeing that all of them are trying to come to a similar place and give us truth and a framework through which we can live. Like, um, just remembering that it isn't the only thing and that there are many ways to look at the same thing, and this is the avenue that we've chosen to look at life through. But just remembering that it's just one way. And yeah, so I'm always skeptical of it all the time, and it's how I've decided to live my life and what works for me right now. um yeah, that's
Yeah.
my answer to that. Yeah.
What do you think of choice?
What?
What do you think of no choice?
Uh, I think my perception of no choice is kind of what we talked about earlier. No choice is okay. For me, it's if I go against this and I don't wait to respond and I initiate or I get into desire or whatever it ends up being. If I try to not eat consecutively, I have all the choice in the world to not do that, and I don't have a choice in the fact that it won't work out or that it doesn't work out or that I meet frustration. So I have choice in doing whatever I want, but it doesn't seem like I have a choice in whether or not that works out for me. So um, even if yeah, so that's how I view no choice. How about you?
Oh gosh, I have a complicated relationship
Yeah.
with no choice, because on some level it's very obvious to me, like you said, that
Mhm.
your interaction with the world happens in a certain way, and
Mhm.
it really just doesn't seem like there's any choice in that. It doesn't seem like there's a choice in you being you. It doesn't seem like there's a choice in kind of how people react to you. It doesn't seem like there is really any true choice, like Alok says it, like you have choice,
Mhm.
but not about anything that matters, you know.
Yeah.
And I ever since I heard that, I was like, oh my God, like I think kind of explains it in a really simple way. You can make a lot of choices, but like you said, the consequences of that, it and again, I think it's important to not just accept it as a blanket statement that, it's not like life is predestined. It's just that
Mhm.
it seems human design says that you're genetically predisposed in a certain way. and you have
Yeah.
no choice in that. And from what I've seen in my experiments so far, in my process so far, seems to stand true, right?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I'm still conceptualizing that one. I'm still thinking about that one. I'm still chewing on that one. I'm still
That's so
observing.
interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
That's so interesting that you say that, because for me, when I first learned about no choice, maybe it was a sacral response or whatever, but I was like, this is no choice for me. Maybe it's my defined head and ajna, but I was like, this is what it is. And it hasn't really deviated from that. But I've seen, on Instagram mostly, people kind of debating it and figuring out what it is and chewing with it and chewing it over or whatever. Throat. But for me, it was so, oh, this is what it is. And I have such blinders to like any other, because I'm like, oh, well, like what honestly is going through my mind right now is like, oh, those people who don't know what it is, they're wrong. This is what it is, which I recognize in myself. And it's not something that I'm going to try and change in other people. But for me, it's like, it was immediately cut and dry, sacral, like, this is what it is. And I have not, I don't see it in any other way. Um, which
yeah,
is, another thing about design. It's like, oh, wow, this is how I am. And I see how this can be viewed as not a good trait. And this was my reaction to it. And this is how I feel about it. And this is what I think about it. And I see it being a very rigid, structured way to look at the world. And I don't have a choice in that. Like I can't force myself to um, be more open-minded and fluid in how I view this, which is wild. It's like, oh, I can watch myself doing this and I can't change it. So for me, that space in between is the no choice. Like I can watch this happening, see how it can be perceived, but I can't do anything about it.
yeah, yeah. That's
It's
wonderfully
wild.
put. I mean, you also have the channel awareness in the knowing circuit. So, I mean, there is
Yeah.
just that frequency lands for you, and that's it. You just know it in yourself. Like, there's you don't need to understand it. Whereas for me,
Yeah.
in the way,
Logic.
yeah, it's just like, okay, but it kind of makes sense logically. Like it makes sense that you're oriented a certain way. It's very obvious to me when I think of it like that. Like, okay, am I
Mm-hmm.
oriented a certain way? I grew up with certain kids, right? We grew up in similar kind of families. We went to the same school. We studied the same thing. We're all doing something completely different with our lives,
Yeah.
completely different spheres. We were
Yeah.
exposed to similar kind of conditioning, and so I'm like, it does seem like we are oriented in a specific way. And then what we see wherever we end up is also so different. I can meet the same friends, say we go on a holiday together in the same place, right?
Mm-hmm.
What we see there, what we experience there, what we absorbed from there, completely different, right?
Completely different.
And what
Yeah.
we share about that moving forward in life is also something completely different. So when I do think about it, it does seem like we are oriented differently. It does seem like we see
Mm-hmm.
things, we hear different things, we observe different things, we're interested in different things, we want to share different things. And it also seems like you don't have any choice in that. It
Yeah.
it does seem that way. And yet
Mm-hmm.
I don't have um like a certainty, like I'm certain that we have no choice. I think we don't have choice in at certain, when these big moments in your life, that I was meant to go to law school in a different country, and that kind of changed the course of my life in a certain way. Like retrospectively looking at that, I can really see that my life has a flow of its own, and I have no idea what that flow is. Like,
Yeah.
absolutely none at all. And so it seems like these big turning points, no choice. Kind of
Mm-hmm.
what you end up moving towards, no choice. But like everyday little life, you know, like I have some agency, but again,
Yeah.
who knows? Maybe it's just like Ra says, it's all happening in the gray matter before you can even conceptualize it, and then it comes and that's what I don't have certainty about it right now. And so I would like to just stay in the process of thinking about no choice, conceptualizing about no choice, and being honest that that's where I'm at. Because I have noticed, like, within myself, and like the earlier parts of when I was really obsessed with human design, and like it was the answer for me, that I kind of pretended to have certainty about things that I didn't have certainty about. And it's not like I was consciously pretending to do that, but that nothing had ever made so much sense to me that I assumed that the rest of it was true as well. Whereas now I think, now that the honeymoon phase is over, I'm just kind of stepping back. What do I have certainty of? What do I understand for sure? What actually makes sense to me? And let me actually share that with honesty, because I'm responsible for what I share.
Yeah, you are. That is also such a difference too, because for me, a defined head, innocence, motivation, like I don't even question that anymore. Like I figured out what no choice was, and I was okay. This is my view of it. That's it. I don't even question. It's not even a thing that I'm constantly mulling over. It's like, oh, that's done, and I don't have a responsibility to like for any of that. It's I completely just, it's not a question that enters my head unless I'm asked it. So I'm so fixed in that, and I see that, and it's almost like embarrassing for me to admit to this, because there is such a, oh no, but shouldn't you, as a responsible human design person, like person who shares this information, shouldn't you, isn't there a responsibility that you should have? But then go back to design, like, no, I'm just here to know what I know and keep it for myself, not necessarily share it. I do have that undefined throat. I'm here to kind of just sit on my mountain and be innocent in it. And if people want to ask, they can ask, and I can share what I think about it, but it's not my responsibility. I'm just here to live it. I'm just here to live it, maybe even by myself, with unless it's pulled out of me. Whereas for you, it's like, no, undefined head, and just being a mental projector, so many things about you. You're here to mull it over, guilt, motivation. You have a responsibility to the people you're sharing this information with, to give them what you know, and to share your process if you don't know, because otherwise you're not doing it right for you. So
Yeah. It's very naturally that my process has kind of brought me here. That's also something interesting now that we're speaking about no choice. It's like, I really right now don't feel like I have any choice in being responsible. And I also feel like I didn't have any choice in kind of sharing the way that I shared before, or what I shared before, because I just feel like it's all part of the process and unfolding as it's supposed to. And it's interesting, like I want to be like really, really skeptical of just saying like blanket statements, but at the same time, it just keeps kind of proving itself. It just keeps kind of itself, and fascinating journey to be on. And honestly, I seriously enjoyed this conversation. I'm so happy.
Oh yeah, me too.
That you said yes and you had a response for it, because it was such a refreshing, like grounded, truly enjoyable conversation. So thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you so much. And I love everything that you share, and I'm glad that you are in this, because I feel like the human design community needs you. So it's wonderful to see all the shares that you do, and I love this podcast and everything. So thank you for having the conversation with me.